Here to consider such is geopolitical analyst, historian, researcher of the occult with multiple books to his name, Matthew Ehret, aka Canadian Patriot. Oh, blimey. Ride your fader, baby. So there's a hint. An esotericist. And so I guess I have to ask him, is Justin Trudeau the devil's spawn? Taking your calls and comments, taking your calls and comments. So there you go. KO.click Zoom. Big shout out to Marcus. God bless you, Marcus Thurston. God bless you, mate. He booked tonight's guest and last week's guest. Paul Craig Roberts, yeah, that awesome. Don't know that I agree with him about everything, but I mean, hey, blimey, that's normal, isn't it? Definitely want to learn from these people. And Matthew, sir, I'm really, really grateful to have you come on and have a chat with us. Incredible times we're living in. First of all, how did you get into well, maybe some people would call you an esoterrorist.
That's funny. That's funny. How did I get into this? Yeah, I got into this just trying to figure out what the hell's going on, what's shaping our world, and it doesn't take you long scratching at some of the popular narratives around 9/11 or international bankers' conspiracies or whatever before you get to Freemasonic agencies that are sort of floating about. No matter where you're researching at any point in history, you're going to tend to find, if you look for the cause of an assassination of a great leader, or the reason why a war happened, or some regime change, revolutionary manipulation, you'll usually tend to find Freemasonic operations. So about 18 years ago, when I began looking into this stuff, 20 years ago, I guess 2004 was sort of my big sort of burst period of being shaken up. You and me are conspiracy theorist contemporaries. Not 9/11 woke you up, you say? That was a big one for me. Yeah. And for yourself too, I guess. Building 7, to be honest. Yeah, that was a huge one.
Go on anyway. Sorry.
You up too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the first thing that woke me up. I was a journalist on the other side of the tracks, BBC and all that. Anyway, out of interest, was there any esoteric type iconry involved in 9/11 in your opinion?
I've seen some interesting presentations on the topic that I haven't myself researched. So because I haven't myself looked deeply,
yeah, fair enough. I'm not going to. I guess the Pentagon.
Yeah, well, that's yeah.
Okay, please. Okay, that's how you've got into it, and you've written a shed load of books. It always strikes me that the problem with being a historian is knowing how to separate fact from fiction, written by the victors, all that. Is that less affected in the world of esoterics and the occult, or not?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's see, so here's the thing, because a lot of the act of doing research is self-examination, right? Because you're always thinking, well, how are my prejudice, my assumptions, my identity, my desires coloring what I'm looking at? So on the one hand, that's important.
Yes.
And also being aware that you're probably being lied to about most things that you're going to read about anything is going to be colored by the agendas, identities, subjective colorings of the author of whoever is writing it. And if, as they say, wars are written by the winners, then it's fair enough to say that if we're run by a satanic priesthood of a death cult today, then it's likely that most of the acceptable texts about our past are colored by that fact. So
hold on a sec. Hold on. Let me just get that back. What did you call it? A satanic death cult?
Death cult.
Of today. Right. We'll come back to that. Carry on.
Sure. Yeah, we can circle back to that if you want later. Sure. Yeah. So it's like so how do you know anything, right? If we're subjective, we don't know everything. We're ignorant about a bunch of things. Plus, the world that we're trying to examine is shaped by lies and dishonesty. How do we know anything, right? Like, what? So for me, I was fortunate at a certain point, early enough on in my research, that I encountered some of the writings by a now deceased American political figure by the name of Lyndon LaRouche, whom I found to be very interesting. Let's just say that I found his thesis about the not dead British Empire as a very interesting thesis, because here I am in Canada, that's where I live, and we have the monarchy is we're still a monarchy with the Queen. The Governor General is still the head of state officially. We've got lieutenant governors appointed. Like most of what is shaping Canada is not elected. And I found that I was always bothered by that. Even before I became political, I was bothered by that, but I didn't know how to think about that. So this thesis comes to my door now all of a sudden, that there's still that the idea that the British Empire dissolved itself and now it's just an American empire, which is the popular narrative, is a lie. That was a fraud. And so that's what LaRouche is saying. And I'm like, well, if that's true, that would help me explain some elements of confusion that I have about what's Canada or the broader Commonwealth. Or why did the US start self-sabotaging over the dead body of JFK, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King? What took over? What is this deep state thing? So LaRouche's point is that he made the emphasis that we should always read go look to people who made history for good or for bad, who made discoveries, who made for good or for bad, or who sabotaged discoveries or made discoveries, and then read their original writings. So if Ben Franklin made discoveries of electricity and worked to initiate over decades the thing that became the American Revolution with a new type of government, read Ben Franklin's writings. Don't read so much about Ben Franklin from experts who are pre-approved by a local priesthood in our current day to tell us how to feel or think about an individual. Read that person's writings and develop our own thoughts. And sure enough, I got into the habit early enough of doing that, and I found reading original writings has been very useful, because I found over the course of a few years of doing this sort of practice, whether it's Johannes Kepler's writings on science or Plato or whomever, that there's a common there's a common quality of their minds and identity that they're all tapping into. It's not, they're all individual people who are all unique unto themselves. They all have emotions, but they're tapping into a path towards wisdom that uses common qualities of the mind, of self-reflection, self-examination, a sort of a moral conscience that's tied to reason, that's used in an internally dialectical manner that also has an external dialectic quality to it, right? To talk through using reason ideas about big things that lead to discoveries and things that deprive the oligarchy of their desires or ability to keep us enshackled in a I guess you could say like a shadowland of caves or a cave that has shadows cast by a priesthood. They become less capable of keeping us under that control, which is what feudal oligarchs always want, is well-behaved human cattle who believe in shadows as reality, are happy eating cud, and don't question things and don't move too much outside of an acceptable set of limits. That's what the oligarchy wants. Every time the oligarchy loses the ability to maintain that, there's something to learn from. So that was my approach, and I found myself becoming more self-aware of my own mind's qualities.
Sir,
and
I think you're spot on. I think you're absolutely spot on, and you speak so clearly about the topic. I mean, just how concerned should people be? We'll get into a little bit of the evidence in a minute as well, but I mean, how concerned? People seem to be completely asleep about this, oblivious. Let's take, for example, Charles's coronation last year. I mean, he looked as though he literally just walked out of a 33rd degree lodge when he was on the balcony at Buckingham Palace in his purple tux or whatever. People just don't question what that actually might mean. No.
No, I know, and it's staring us right in front of the face. I was alluding to how most Canadians, if you asked most Canadians what type of government they think they have, they would say a democracy or something. That's what they would naively say. And the fact that we have the Queen, or now the King Charles's face on all of our money, every elected member of government has to pledge allegiance to not just the monarch but the heirs, the entire hereditary structure. It's right in front of our faces. But
pseudo feudal, isn't it? I mean, it is feudal.
It's pseudo feudal is a good way of putting it, I guess. But it is, and you're right. It is,
and it's becoming feudal. It's reverting to feudalism.
Yeah.
But that's political. I'm curious. Does it actually matter that the guy likes dressing up in apron? That Klaus Schwab looks like Ming out of Flash Gordon, or probably would have been an extra in Flash Gordon. Does any of that? How much does that matter?
It matters quite a bit. I mean, I guess you're getting at like the question of the Masonic
hidden power, sir. I don't know where it lies.
All of this element. It matters. It does matter. I mean, look, the Manitoba state or provincial legislature. Okay, in Manitoba. It doubles as a Freemasonic building with Hermes Trismegistus at the top of it. The whole thing, I visited it, I did the tour. It's a Freemasonic building designed by Aleister Crowley. It was designed by Aleister Crowley because it was the center of some like global chakra point of North America. So they built it right there.
On a ley line as well.
On a ley line, yeah. And
where is it? Sorry, is this where?
Manitoba. Manitoba, Canada.
Right.
So if you're an elected member of the state, the provincial legislature, that's where you go to work. I don't know if most people who are members of it even are aware of what they're walking through. It's pretty loud. There's even what looks to me like I visited the basement. It looks like a giant sacrifice chamber, if you ask me. Are they aware? Some probably are. I mean, they're that's part of it. And the fact that Aleister Crowley, the B666, was the guy selected somehow to be the designer of it. That's interesting. Like, what the hell did he represent?
That's
what
right.
was his influence?
Because he was English, Crowley, wasn't he? Presumably, he was living in England, not Canada. But nonetheless,
yeah. Well, he was on the British. He was actually a British agent. He was working for MI6. Actually, got a book here. I was just working on.
I didn't know that he was an agent.
Secret Agent 666. Aleister Crowley. Picture of the Lusitania sinking there. So he was actually in the USA before, during, and after World War I.
Was he?
He spent a lot of time acting as if he was a German. Patriot or a dissident British imperial pro-German occult agent for Greater Germany. So that was his job, but he was always working for MI6, and he even said so after the war. But he was interfacing with occult networks, being groomed, or at least not groomed, but being supported by the Sleepy Hollow Country Club of New York, which is sort of where all of the Boston Brahmin, the old families that made their fortunes working on the opium trade with the British Empire in America. So all of these old families are all centered in or one of their hubs is the Sleepy Hollow Country Club. And these are all also members of the Scottish Rite, the northern branch of the Scottish Rite Freemasonic outfit that they're all also parts of. That also is sort of the junior branch of the United Grand Lodge that's centered in Great Britain, which the Duke of Kent oversees as the Grand Master. So that's sort of the umbrella lodge, right? The United Grand Lodge of Britain is the umbrella for these sub-lodges, and the big one in America was the Scottish Rite. Crowley is sort of everywhere. He's kind of like one of these chameleons who's just so good at just shapeshifting in a sense, and I'm saying this in a metaphorical way. I don't believe in literal shapeshifting. Okay. But what I'm saying is that he's like he's so able to sever his conscience and soul and like sense of morality that from his raison d'être that and he's like very, very deep into the occult. So he's part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He's part of the Scottish Rite. He's part of the everything. And so he's not an isolated figure. So the way that we've been told how to think about Crowley is that he's this eccentric Satanist who is like an interesting character to look at. No, this guy was interfacing with the highest echelons of the inner priesthood. He was being protected. He's at the heart of the sinking of the Lusitania that this book by Richard Spence demonstrates, that he and his occult network in America were behind getting the USA into World War I. He set up the Ordo Templi, like he headed the Ordo Templi Orientis that then created the a big part of the organizing structure of the Manhattan Project. This is what Jack Parsons, who was a disciple of Crowley, was who saw himself as the beast, set up the Jet Propulsion Laboratories when he was doing occult sex magic and trying to like channel demons and shit. L. Ron Hubbard, who creates Scientology, as well as a disciple of Crowley, who sees himself as the Antichrist. They all see themselves as the Antichrist. Like all these guys, that's the common theme. They all want to be the one, right? And they're all trying to like give birth to like some scarlet baby. They're obsessed. Like that's what Roman Polanski was also obsessed with, probably still is giving birth to a scarlet baby that will be the child that will do the Antichrist stuff. That's where I think that, you know, Roman Polanski's, you see how like also their control of Hollywood over decades and decades is very influential at both predictive programming, but also there's a ritualistic aspect to it too. So the Rosemary Baby outfit, right, from that movie by Polanski was selected to be put onto Kate Middleton, you know, this useful idiot girl who's been like, you know, selected to be the the mother of the one. And they put her into a Rosemary's Baby dress when they announced her second kid in 2018.
Whoa,
right?
This is fascinating. Carry on.
Stuff, right?
Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes. Kate, go on. Yeah, sorry. What do? They put her into Rosemary's Baby dress. That film, Polanski, the baby comes out and it's the devil, whatever. What did they do with Kate?
Well, the people who manage her grooming, her dress, whatever she wears in public, it's all managed, right? Like these people are totally handled. So they selected the exact, very unique design of the Rosemary from that film, from that movie, with the red garb and the white doily around her neck. It's a very specific dress. You can't miss it.
That could have been coincidence. That could have been coincidence.
No, not at the.
Have you got a picture of that? You'll have to send me a picture. You'll have to send me
Google it. Actually, anybody listening to this right now should just Google Kate Middleton, Rosemary's Baby. Just Google that, and you'll get what I'm talking about. It'll make sense.
Please do. Somebody put the link in the comments, please. That is fascinating. What's your take on Kate's gone missing? I think Edward's basically hung up his clogs or something. Charles apparently has got cancer or whatever. I don't know. Are they all in bunkers or? What is the deal? And particularly with Kate, is that?
I don't know. Kate's gone missing. What is this? You tell me.
She's been out the way for the last 3 months or so. She had an operation. Apparently, it was quite nasty. I don't know. Maybe she had Rosemary's Baby. I don't know. Anyway, right. Okay. Look, I want to change course slightly because that obviously is completely speculative anyway. We had that Putin interview a couple of weeks ago with Tucker Carlson, and he talked about denazification. And as you, I'm sure, will be far better versed than I, the Nazis were fascinated with the occult. Is what's going on in Ukraine, to some extent, an esoteric war?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, kind of. There's a book here that I'm also working on right now called that people should buy it if they can buy it. It's by Nicholas Goodrick Clark. I encourage people to see. I do this stuff because I want people to read. These podcasts are great to like rev the engine, but it's not durable. Like people need to read their own stuff. So this is a quality book I'm reading right now called Aryan Cults, Esoteric Nazism, and the Politics of Identity. This author is really good. Everything I've read by him has been very impressive so far. But the Black Sun does reference, so that you've got the Black Sun of the occult as a very it's an esoteric symbol that was very much, that was seen as very important to the Thule Society, which itself was sort of the inner sanctum Gnostic satanic, I would say satanic mystery cult at the heart of the SS Inner Elites. It was a spin-off of an organization that grew out of the Theosophists. So the Theosophists of Blavatsky was sort of this Rosicrucian. It was kind of a Rosicrucian cult, but it was more than that, because it was doing more. The Rosicrucians were a little bit more simply Western focused, like Kabbalah, Gnostic rituals, things like that. Whereas this also, the Theosophists added to it by looking for also
Matthew,
yep.
Please educate me. What is briefly a Theosophist?
It's somebody who is it's a grouping, it's a movement that was created in the late 19th century around Helena Blavatsky, who was a princess from a high Russian noble family. Her grandfather was the Grand Master of a Freemasonic order that believed in hidden masters, which is the rite of strict observance that was set up by a German occultist in the 1750s. So her grandfather was a high-level person within that. And so the idea of hidden masters, that we are that those who go through gnosis, that is a quality of knowledge totally severed from reason. So if you go through all of the rites of initiation, you get gnosis, and then at that point you get to channel messages from hidden masters or whatever, beings from the beyond, whether Tibetan mysterious figures or other creatures from other planets or whatever. Well, there's so many variations on the theme, but that's one of the common threads. So Blavatsky took those lessons from her grandfather's library, internalized them, spun it up a little bit. I think she had some managers handling her a little bit, and wanted to take the occult and look for different common themes of Western occultism within Hindu, Buddhist scripture primarily, and then create a hybrid, sort of what became known as the perennial philosophy, sort of a universal Gnostic esoteric mysticism under a priesthood with rites of initiation, with an exoteric sort of public face and an esoteric inner teaching. So a hidden secret doctrine for the elites, and then a public low-level, messaging that's very different for the masses. Because otherwise, I don't think any of these satanic operations would work very well if they just openly said exactly what they believe. That's part of the way.
They kind of do, though, don't they? I mean, look at the media. Look at any pop video, pretty much, with one of these Disney princess type characters. They're all using satanic symbolism all over the place, and blood and God knows what. I mean, it is in your face, no? And you've got satanic churches springing up in the States, and people just seem to tolerate it. It's all fine, It's like.
So let's circle back to that. Because I didn't fully. I should probably wrap up.
Please.
The Nazi connection. So the Theosophists. So in Blavatsky's work, she put a lot of emphasis upon redefining what the swastika was as a very important central figure within her cosmology. That, I mean, the swastika, there's it's been around for a long time, and it's not an evil or a good thing unto itself. It has positive symbolic value of prosperity going back to ancient times. I think everyone watching knows that. However, she had a particular spin on the swastika and popularized that. But also, there were subgroups that spun off that were all connected to the same thing. So you had like the Anthroposophists that spun off in 1912 with Steiner to accommodate those members of the Theosophists who were unwilling to abandon completely their Christian identities. They were uncomfortable with the idea that we have to totally let go of that in favor of Krishnamurti, some new messiah, or as they call Maitreya, a new form of reincarnation of the great avatar, or a new avatar of the the Christ impulse that was Gautama Buddha, and that then reincarnated as Christ, and that reincarnated as, their various avatars. So that was a little too extreme for some of the Theosophists, and so they had a spin-off group called Anthroposophists. They also had another spin-off group for called the Ariosophists under this fellow Guido von List, who basically same thing, but this one just had more of a focus on ruin, Nordic Viking, pagan myths, but again with all of the exact same core assumptions of the Anthroposophists and Theosophists that of channeling messages from the beyond, from the Aryan gods that ran the Hyperborean Atlantean civilization that was the great, master race that the Aryans are all sort of participating in, that all of these groups kind of believe in different degrees, that channel messages to us through inner initiates that can then travel on astral planes or read Akashic records or detect past or future lives. So they all have the same cosmology with different brandings or flavors. And the Ariosophists gave rise to what became the Thule Society under Karl Kellner.
Yeah.
Under
Thule. Is that Thule?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Carry on, please.
Yeah, and then and people like Goering and a lot of the inner elites that became the SS were all at this time in 1911, 1912, 13. They were all basically what are called Wundervogels. So they were bringing back a Gaia Earth Mother worship cult, which was one of the control mechanisms of the ancient world, was hedonism and Earth Mother worship.
So they're pretty out there. Is that actually harking back to Anunnaki stuff, the kind of stuff that Sitchin wrote about?
Well, Sitchin is a Gnostic esotericist himself who's part of the satanic underworld, so I wouldn't really put too much emphasis upon him. He's trying to overthrow Christianity.
Really?
Yeah. You can listen to his interviews. He's very clear on his position.
Zachariah Sitchin, American academic who wrote the books about Sumeria and the tablets.
Yeah, but he's not American. What's country here? Let me just Google it. What country is he from here? Zachariah Sitchin.
I'm just curious. I read that. Blimey, that book was hard going.
Yeah. No, he is himself a Gnostic. Yeah, he's from Baku, Azerbaijan. He's a mystic himself.
Was he wrong then about the Anunnaki?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that would make sense in terms of the missing link, wouldn't it? I don't know. I just wonder. Yeah, I have no idea, but I'm curious.
Yeah, they're look, the oligarchy has been trying to reframe ancient history to make it seem as though ancient aliens have been at the heart of all of the building of the pyramids, of everything humans have done it can be explained away by our interfacing with aliens that we access through, and then there's this whole new field of like ufology and mysticism that have all merged together under parapsychology. They've all been sort of fused under one thing as this new, which we interface through psychedelic drugs and rites of initiation, which they were doing back in the ancient times. With hallucinogenic drugs were part of the mystical experience for the elites in the cult of Eleusis of ancient Greece, or in the cults of Isis or Marduk. So hallucinogenic drugs, whether opium, mushrooms, plant blight like wheat blight that became LSD-25 under MK Ultra, those were already a thing. But then there's a whole school of academics who are part of this occult underground who have been normalized over the last 50, 60 years especially, who have promoted the idea that that it is through this experience that we interface with these alien beings from other dimensions. Like they talk about 5th, 6th, 7th dimensions that we can only access when we're on drugs, that then give us knowledge. Like, and so then they build up all of these theses.
Hold on, Matthew. Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
You're saying that the whole ancient aliens thing is a lot of pap. In your opinion?
It's a lot of pap. Yeah.
Really? Wow. Is there not a lot of evidence for it? I mean, for example, carvings in hieroglyphics and stuff like that. UFOs and extraordinary stuff, and the giants unearthed every 20 years or something in Mexico or somewhere. These guys that are considerably larger than Homo sapiens. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I hear all the time people say,
I always look before I go straight to a supernatural explanation for something. I need to explore and exercise fully whether a natural explanation is possible, which is before I make the leap. Yeah. And so for me, that's really important. So when I look at a carving of something which is like a circle, I could say, okay, I interpret that as a UFO, or I can interpret that as a circle. I mean, circle. Sometimes a circle is a circle. Sometimes a circle means it could be an expression of what somebody thinks of. Like that, we don't know because these are carvings on stone, right? They're human beings are not always just drawing exactly what they see. Sometimes they're also drawing what a sorcerer, a chieftain, is describing as a myth maker. Like it's a storytelling society. It's a very imaginative society back in if we go back 10, 20, 30,000 years ago, society's scientific understanding of the universe was very low. So our myth making was very high, very, very high. We looked at the world through the eyes of almost like children in that sense, looking for stories that would explain things that we couldn't explain through logic or reason because we didn't have knowledge of science. Now, on the one hand, I have to keep that in mind when I'm trying to interpret, like how do I interpret what I'm seeing carved into etchings or things like that. Number two, I have to think the popular models of most science and archaeology explanations of things is a lie. I know that that's a lie because the oligarchy that is running our science in our world today doesn't want us to know what science is. They want us to have an explanatory
well, they're lying about what science is. I mean, they're making it very obvious.
What is the Earth? What is geology? What's inside? We're given all of these like certain cutouts of exactly what's inside the Earth, what's inside the sun, right? We're shown these images since we're like kids, but it's like we only scratched 14 kilometers into the crust of the Earth. We don't know shit. Like honestly, like there's so little we know. To be honest.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it.
We don't have to wonder. We don't have to try to know because we already know. And it's like, well, wait a minute. And we're given these models exactly of what the atom is, and we're like shown exactly that you got these electrons separated by empty space with a nucleus, and we're told all of these attributes, and it's like most of that's probably garbage. Like honestly. And the same thing for ancient civilizations and the common what are called standard models of ancient archaeology are also wrong. They're just wrong. And so because Darwinism is wrong. I could say that Darwinism is wrong. Charles Darwin he didn't.
Well, he was an evolutionist, wasn't he? That was his deal. Evolution.
Well, it was a specific kind of evolution. It was an evolution based upon the politicization of nature. So he basically took what the British Empire was doing by being very adaptive and destructive to things that challenged the British Empire that he was, a part of. Thomas Huxley, who was his manager or handler.
Yeah, wasn't that Aldous Huxley's dad or something? I think.
Grandpa. And Thomas Huxley was a high-level grand strategist for the British Empire. He was a top dog in the British Royal Society in Cambridge, and was selected to handle and manage Charles Darwin. But basically, they were taking what the Empire did as a matter of course, and always has done, to destroy the weak in a race for the strong to be declared the most fit to survive. And then they imposed that already unnatural way of being onto all of nature and said that that's how we can account for the changes that we find within fossil records over time, even though there are there's no case of gradualism in the fossil records. So even though we don't see that, he said that's how we have to assume that there's just this slow, gradual randomness. And he said the other thing was that living matter changes according to a random function. There's random mutations happening that it's like rolling the dice that accounts for occasionally somebody will get lucky, get a bigger claw that gives them an edge to be better at killing their rivals in the race for more sex and more food in a world of diminishing returns. So, and also on that issue of a world of diminishing returns, Darwin also believed not only in no directionality, no creative leaps, no purpose. He consciously said no purpose. He said it's all random. And he also said, I use Malthus. He described in his autobiography
Malthus?
that
What's that?
Thomas Malthus was a British high priest who ran the British Haileybury College that trained all of the British East India economists.
Yeah.
Haileybury College, yeah. And Malthus
For
was
girls,
the first person,
no girls' school, posh girls' school.
maybe it is now. I don't fucking know. But back then,
Okay.
in 1799, it was sort of the hub that trained all the British East India Company economists. And Thomas Malthus was the first to put forth the.
I went to a school like that. I left early.
School?
I think they were pleased too. Anyway, sorry, Matthew. But the thing is, though, okay. So where are you saying we came from? In that case,
well,
if it's not from the swamp,
is that,
and it's not from outer space,
I'm laying out the reasons for why the standard models on these things are wrong. But because we're expect to believe them, and because they don't match the evidence of like the fact that there is directionality, there is evidence of purpose built into nature, even without humans. It's like I still see evidence that there is purposefulness and reason shaping the behavior of the planets, why planets are in the locations that they are, why there is the periodic table that formed where atoms organize themselves and were created that fall into certain harmonic patterns within the periodic table that we call it today, or of Mendeleev's discoveries that are being generated by things we barely understand from within supernova, within suns are generating through things we don't fully know. Is it fusion? Is it matter antimatter reactions? I don't know. We don't know. Like we've barely scratched the surface. We're so primitive. But there's evidence of harmony, composition, reason, purpose, directionality, directed change, not random change, but directed change, evident in all of nature. The fact that at some point, it seems like in the deep history of the
what
Earth,
is that? Cause and effect, you mean? For example?
Yeah, well, every cause has an effect, but in the deep history of the Earth, there's things get more boring the further back we go in time, and at a certain point, we only see evidence of like simple-celled amoebas, very very boring type of world that of life back then, and then we have not
bit like the bloke in the Oval Office. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
We're society.
Not a lot going on. Not a lot going on.
Sorry.
No, in the Oval Office.
No, not upstairs.
What I'm saying is that there is the evidence shows us that we live in a reasonable, created universe of purposefulness, of creative reason, that there's always a striving towards perfectibility that unites the moral and the physical sort of sciences into one thing. They're not separate things, that we are part of that process, that we are, because we can reflect on it, what our reflection either is unnatural and so we have a choice. I could either see that my ability to reflect and have this conversation with you is an unnatural process completely detached from all of the mechanisms of the universe, or I could choose to, and I prefer this one, to see that this is all possible because we are a reflection of the mind of the creator in some way, that the entire universe is the thing shaping the entire fabric of the universe is reflected in healthy conversation, dialectic, reasonable searches for truth, the transformations that are made possible by the acting upon discovered truths. I could choose to see it that way. And that's how I prefer to look at it personally. And I think that when I look at like how did the Pyramid of Giza has the evidence of the golden section built into the construction of the pyramid, the golden section that the Greeks were using to build the Parthenon, that Da Vinci was using to build many of his architectural designs later on in the Renaissance, and many were. There's something about the golden section which is interesting. It's a proportion that we can discover when we look at a square and we cut the square in half, and we look at the side of one square to the hypotenuse of half of the square. So half to the whole. So we have a half of one, and the hypotenuse creates a square root of 5. I could then subtract the small side of that square from the square root of 5, and I can create now a relationship that I identify as the golden section. Now, the golden section is something Da Vinci was looking at because it's everywhere in living things. Where we have life, there's a lot of golden section. Where there is like no life, like in inorganic chemistry, there's no golden section that tends to ever arise. So the fact that it's already there, but we discovered it, I can think, okay, either aliens gave it to ancient like Egyptians 8,000 years ago, or I could say that the Egyptians were smarter than I've been told that they are, and that they were actually doing work on geometry, astronomy, and building with a religious sort of desire. Like obviously it's not totally logic, but that they were building their artistic works and their temples informed by what they saw as the divine character of creation. And
I don't know how they built those things, and in places like, what is it, Peru, where the lines are cut.
Okay, I have a friend.
You hear what I'm saying?
I have a friend of mine. His name is Fehmi Krasniqi. Fehmi Krasniqi is a wonderful researcher and filmmaker who did an incredible movie that people could actually watch after this show is done. I recommend everybody watching our interview.
Yeah.
Go and watch K-19, The Secret of the Great Pyramid by Fehmi Krasniqi. It's about
K-19,
3 hours.
The Secret of the Great Pyramid by Fehmi
with an F, Krasniqi. Don't ask me to spell that. It's it's Krasniqi. So
what does that tell us in a nutshell, please, Matt?
It demonstrates the most reasonable explanation for the construction of the Great Pyramids using evidence, solid evidence, with a strong hypothesis of cement making capabilities. That it was actually cement making, certain types of abilities to melt marble and other things that involved glass lenses that could be created relatively easy, that could create a heat density from the sun if they're about 5 meters in diameter, glass lenses that are as melted sand.
Okay, hold that thought, because we've only got 13 minutes really, and I've got things I want to ask you, and sir, it's really refreshing to hear.
This documentary also explains the inter-oceanic civilization that would have been connected to South American, Peruvian architecture, Indian as well as Egyptian.
Okay,
it's solid. So it's a good documentary, the best one I've seen. People should watch that and then revisit this question.
I appreciate it. I want to take some comments as well, because I'm always crap with comments, and I'm trying not to be. Pandora Chaser says, Sussex area, Crowley lived, I think, did rituals in Ashdown Forest, where Winnie the Pooh was based. I bet Savile was a bastard child of Crowley, says Tony Garrett. Hey, Tony. Greg Romford, there is a story that Barbara Bush, wife of the first President Bush and mother of the second, the one whose broccoli he refused to eat, was the illegitimate daughter of Aleister Crowley, says Greg. Shout out to Vince Cawthron. Hey, Vince. Little Ace Angel says, he's a grumpy but lovable granddad of UNN. Vince Cawthron. He is a grumpy old get well, mate. God bless you. God bless you, Vince. Shorty222, Prince William is the Antichrist. That seems an excellent juncture to pull you back in, Matt.
I don't think he's the Antichrist. I mean, I think that certain forces who manage these poor kids born into these royal families do believe that they want to make his kid, I think the second kid, out into some Antichrist figure. But I don't believe that he actually is that, nor do I believe his kid is that. But I believe that these guys are doing a bit of a Pygmalion effect, a demonic Pygmalion effect onto the world. On the issue of Crowley, I'd look into also the Plymouth Brethren, which is a sect. One of its leaders was John Nelson Darby, who was the founder of the whole Darbyite movement as well. And the Plymouth Brethren had a exoteric and an esoteric sort of community, and Crowley was born into one of these communities. Very, very hyper Puritan to an extreme degree, but only designed to be so Puritan in order to induce a Luciferian sort of rebellion impulse in some of its members, which is how they groom and find talent is they create hyper Puritan, like British Anglican, stiff upper lip, principled sort of behaviorism. That's a great way to just stifle people's emotions and create like rebelliousness that will then be the feeding line into the Luciferian schools, where those who have the talent will find themselves now given higher discoveries that they're groomed into, that will qualify them to be managers of the empire as they grow into maturity.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
I went to one of those schools. They wanted me to be an accountant, I think. Anyway, right. So my question really remains pretty much what it was at the top of the show, Matthew, which I guess, to put it a different way, is because things so mad. I'm a layman. I don't know what to believe about any of this stuff. I do have personal faith, but I don't know what to believe really. And I guess that's what faith is. But I'm not researched in the way that you are, sir. So I appreciate that. And therefore I ask you, if we are in this crazy mad world where we do know for a fact that people are trying to control us and to impose an entirely new world order on as much of the planet as they can possibly steal from, essentially, given that is the case, it is out in the open in UN documents, in WEF documents, in relationships between the king of God knows far too much and Klaus Schwab, for example, given all that, are we, given Ukraine, given Israel, what's going on in Palestine, etc., so are we in an age at a precipice, at a crossroads for humanity, an age of good versus evil?
Yes.
Well, go on. Elucidate.
Oh, okay.
Why?
Yeah, no,
how worried should we be? Concerned?
Yeah, quite concerned.
I mean, these people, they seem it seems to me they don't have much empathy. Or else they're basically bought, bribed, blackmailed, in which case they're scared and they just have to do the bidding of those above them, what have you. But in many cases, it seems to me they seem to be psychopaths. Or is that maybe a naive attitude? And actually, not necessarily. They're immersed in whatever this ritualistic dogma is that they've been brought up on, rightly or wrongly. Maybe misinterpreted or whatever. How much of a worry is that for humanity?
Yeah, like I look at it as a cultural perversity, a grooming into perversity that is part of an oligarchical cultural matrix that's been very stubbornly holding on like a parasite to humanity for a long time, but it has almost like a self-feeding quality where the more you see the oligarchy, they will tend to, it seems over time, believe in their own myths that they create to keep their victims enmeshed in the cave, believing in shadows. The shadows are myths, sacred myths that explain things that keep us in an invisible cage as human cattle. Now the oligarchy will tend to believe it. So do I think that Prince Charles believes that he is, for example, the heir to the children of Jesus and Mary Magdalene as a special bloodline that's been maintained from France when Jesus, didn't die on the cross but went to France with Mary, and then had babies protected by the Priory of Zion or Sion, whatever that was created later on. They believe. I think he believes that. I think Queen Victoria believed that. She's part of the British Israelite cult. It's a big thing.
Completely mad.
Yeah, it's freaking mad. And do they believe that it's ultimately their destiny to reclaim the
conditioning? Is an amazing thing, isn't it? Because for the court, they love their kings and queens because it gives them power. They wouldn't have any power, these bloody underling Jobsworth tossers, if it wasn't for their kings and queens. And so they basically pump them up. And it's no wonder that these idiots think that they're supernatural or something. No?
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of stupidity.
That's exactly how I see it. I see it as that. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not super dangerous because they manifest their
deluded
belief.
people are highly dangerous.
Yeah, especially when
They're all going to vote for reform in a minute and let Labour in, and guess what? The left takes over. World economic, it doesn't matter who you vote for. I'll let you into a secret. You get the WEF. Sorry.
Yeah.
Carry on, please, Matthew.
I
That's the same in Canada, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it the same in Canada? Doesn't matter who you vote for. You get these weirdos in frocks.
Yeah, typically, yeah. It's but you know, we abrogated our responsibilities over many decades. We kind of, a little bit of that blame does fall on the people as well, who chose to willfully pick the easy road. We're like, okay, I know JFK probably wasn't killed by that lone gunman guy who was killed 3 days later. I know that's probably true, but I don't want to make waves. I want to keep my job safety.
That's right.
And so we all kind of
maybe I should take the jab. Oh, peer pressure. Oh, you know. Oh, I better have my child take the jab.
I'm not making my own manufacturing goods. I know that somebody is in a cheap labor camp doing cheap labor that's feeding my dollar stores.
That's right.
And it's probably
and you're wearing your Nikes.
Immoral, but whatever. I'll just choose to live the easy life and not think about it. And the choice to not think about it and just be happy in the moment, living the easy life, is a form of taking on a bit of that responsibility for the problems in a certain sense, you know. And I don't want to say it's 100%, because again, we didn't make the world we were born into. Yeah. But the oligarchy is they're animated by a deep mystical Gnostic cosmology, which is sort of the opposite game of everything. So everything natural, about what you would consider a natural human growth process of having your reason, your conscience, that grow in harmony with a sense of like family, a loving community, being hugged when you're a kid, learning the beauty, the joys of discovery and charity and all of these things in teaching. That's crushed out of them pretty early on. It's groomed out of them. And so the passions, the pleasures are consciously geared. They're given experiences that awaken and encourage passions of the most perverse, what you call most sinful type, you know, child sacrifice, other things like that, terrible things. We all kind of know about that. If people are watching your show, they know. So does that mean that necessarily I'm saying William does all of these things? I'm not saying that. I don't know. But what I am saying is that they do believe in reconstructing some Crusader Templar kingdom of Jerusalem. They believe that the kingdom of Jerusalem of the Crusade time should be reconstituted, but purged of all the Arabs and Jews living there. But that means you got to get the Arabs and Jews to do it themselves, and that involves certain Kabbalistic synthetic mystery cults that then were groomed by the Darbyites that I was mentioning early on, that did have a direct interplay in the creation of Zionism for British intelligence purposes back in the 19th century. They did have to create and groom certain Druza and other Arab mystery cults that interfaced with the Templars doing Baphomet worship back in the 11th century. They have to groom these things. There's a variety there in Egypt today, in Syria and Iran today. They're still there. They interface. They're willing to kill Iranians and Egyptians and Syrians and Palestinians. They don't care about the individuals, though they have a mystical Muslim veneer as secret societies, but they're not Muslim. Just like the Kabbalistic hierarchy that is at the heart of the worst elements of Israel, they're willing to kill most of the Israelis living in Israel.
Hey,
they don't care.
Matthew, one sec, because Rev Radio is going up to the top of the hour there. So God bless you, Rev Radio. I'll catch you next week. This has been Daily Chaos. You've been listening to Matthew Ehret with me, Ollie Connolly. Matthew, catch you next week, Rev Radio. God bless you. Hold on, let me cut him off. Sorry, Matthew, we got another a minute really, sir. Look, where can people find you? You've got a stack thing, whatnot? Nope.
Yeah, Substack, MatthewEhret.substack.com. Free and paid upgrades. There's also all my books are available on CanadianPatriot.org. Very easy to find. New videos, films that I'm making with my wife. We're doing a film production thing now. That we're gonna have our new
Cynthia Chung. Give her a shout out.
Cynthia Chung. Yeah.
She could well have been on with you. Could have had a chat with the two of you maybe, but that might have been a bit like, I don't know, blind date or something. Mate, Matthew, thank you so much for coming on. It's
sure,
fascinating.
No, it's my pleasure.
We're going to have to go into this in different ways in a minute. I have got one final question for you. I have got a final question. If I sort it. Hold on. Matthew Ehret. Okay, so what is that Trudeau bloke? I mean, he is a bit devil spawny, isn't he? He is a bit spawny.
He's a shadow of a shadow. He doesn't even exist in my mind. He's just he's got nothing. There's nothing that I could identify as being like a human attribute. His whole life has been just flatterers, handlers. He's a shell of a shell of a nothing.
Yeah, I think you're right about these people. But they are. So you're basically saying they're deluded. The reason that they're taking us into a totalitarian future is because they're deluded.
Well, they believe that they're gods and that they can do what gods do. Yeah.
Completely mad.
Yeah. It's an asylum. Yeah. The lunatics have taken over the asylum.
My goodness, Matthew Ehret, God bless you, sir. I hope I've been pronouncing your surname right. Ehret.
Yeah, you did a great job. Yeah, most people fuck it up. You did great.
Thanks. Thank you. You can't hear it, but I got music going on in the background here, by the way. Look, I just want to say, God bless you, Unity News. Catch you next Tuesday. I hope the show actually streamed this week. I think it did. Hey, Struth, I tell you, I sent an apology to Paul Craig Roberts last night for cocking up the tech last week. Windows bloody up to honest gov. Honest, it wasn't me. Anyway, right. See you then next week.
Bye.
Hold on, just don't do that. Blimey. There we go.